Morrow, what's the next topic? I can't find the right window. Disruptors.
Thank you, MorroW.
Thank you, Morrow. That was extremely helpful, man.
Yeah, I used my telepathy, right?
Telepathic, yeah.
Yeah.
So disruptor changed, cost changed from 100, 200 to 150, 150. Let's let Theo take over here and enlighten us on what exactly he thinks this means for Protoss.
Well, I don't think it's going to mean that much. I think, for personally, I only use disruptors in PvP. And I already have gas dumps and Archons in Colossus and whatever units I could otherwise dump gas into. I don't think the disruptor necessarily needs this change in any way. I don't see why it will make disruptors occur more frequently versus either Zerg or Terran. I think it occurs less, but the least frequently in TPP. I would rather see other changes, so I'm going to give this a 5. Is this a 5?
Cool. I will say about this that if there is no difference, as Theo claims, then it's probably just a flat-out bad change. Mainly because that makes it so that Protoss scales better into the late game even. Potentially, if the maps, if we were ever to see split map scenarios and whatnot, then gas is the more scarce resource in StarCraft 2, and so it makes it so that Protoss will be more cost efficient in the late game and probably not change much in the early to mid game, or in the majority of games for that matter. So if that's the case, I will give it a 1, but you guys can probably convince me and sway my mind otherwise, because I'm going off of what Theo said. So, Kevin?
So I have a little bit of a different opinion. I think, so mineral dumps and gas dumps are pretty important for StarCraft in order for like people to maximize the amount of stuff they can make with their army.
Mm-hmm.
Theo basically said Protoss already has enough gas dumps, so if you keep the disruptor at a gas-heavy unit, then you make it more of a tech choice. When you reduce the disruptor's gas cost, and you allow it to be integrated more easily into other compositions. I think right now for Blizzard, it's important that the disruptor is as accessible as possible so that they can get more information about people using it. Like the Liberator for a long time was really strong, but nobody was using it because it was too hard to get to. And now people are super comfortable with the Liberator. They see it a lot, they get more balanced information about it. Blizzard isn't seeing a ton of disruptor use right now, so if they reduce its cost, people start using the disruptor more, then they'll be able to balance tune it a little bit better. So like, I'm not convinced that 150, 150 is where the disruptor should end up, but it's a good step for Blizzard to figure out where the disruptor should end up, both in terms of strength and cost.
So we're going on the assumption that Blizzard's just giving it a value to try and test it out and kind of figure out if that's where it should be and see more use out of it. In my personal opinion, the disruptor has uses. I'm surprised that Theo doesn't use it in PvC, for example. I think that they're a pretty good counter to lurkers, and I like units that you get as a counter to a different unit, and doesn't necessarily just break the game or end the game. So, yeah, I suppose, you know, from the point you're arguing, that Blizzard is just using it to get feedback, then that's, you know, impossible to argue that it's a bad thing. But I don't know if that's the case. TLO?
Yeah, I think it's not a bad change. I'm not seeing a whole lot of disruptors, so whenever they're on the field, they seem pretty strong, but at the same time, they only really seem strong when they're together with the big army, and if you attack in several locations, suddenly they become pretty weak, because you basically need to look at it the entire duration you use the attack of it, so you can balance it out with multitasking against Protoss and dodging the shots. So I think it's a fair change. You know, I don't have a big opinion about it, but I think it's not bad because I barely see disruptors.
Okay, so both of you like the change. That you give it a rating, Kevin?
If Blizzard is doing this on the logic that I said, I give it a 10 out of 10. If they're just doing it because they want to change it, then 8 out of 10. Like, I think it's a good change either way.
Okay.
But it's a better change if they're using it to get more information.
Okay, do you guys not share the opinion? I guess it's pretty rare, especially in Legacy of the Void right now, that a game would extend to a mined out map. I don't know if any of you guys have played a game like that. I actually haven't, so maybe my opinion on that is invalid.
The closest I got last night I played a 40-minute game, and we were mining out the middle bases on Bridgehead. So it was close to mined out, but that's like
probably
a super,
not an issue.
Yeah, super rare.
Yeah. Okay, MorroW? Or actually,
Yeah, like
what's your rating?
Oh, the rating? I guess I give it a 6 out of 10.
Okay. MorroW?
yeah, by CatZ's logic, I was actually gonna give it a low rating, but CatZ
Yeah.
convinced me. Like we want to save more disruptors, so changing the cost is a good way to go about it. I actually have a suggestion for the disruptor. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. Personally, I really miss War Prism Disruptor. I think they should allow disruptors who are currently attacking to be picked up by War Prisms. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's crazy, man. So the disruptor is just invincible?
No, what it means is we're going to do some damage changes to the disruptor, because I agree with Mo. We talked about this yesterday, that the disruptor feels too much of an all or nothing unit, especially because it's not just an 80 damage storm kind of spell. It does insane damage to lurkers, it does insane damage to roaches, marauders, and all of these kinds of units, right? And with the 21-second cooldown, with PvP mostly, I think this is a problem, that you just have a few of them, and because they just damage every single unit crazily, right? You can have like 10, 15 disruptors and it just becomes like a ball war, right? You basically play dodgeball, right? Is this good? Is this better than Colossus in Heart of the Swarm? I would say yes. But what I've learned with the nerf Colossus that I actually think is very nice is the reduced damage means they have less of an impact in PvP games, right? So that's great, but I'm not going to go further with that. I agree with MorroW that I feel the Disruptor should be a unit that is mainly designed around the use of a Warp Prism, and we can tweak around with that, and then reduce the damage of the Disruptor, perhaps even the cooldown, so that it synergizes even more so with great Warp Prism micro, right? And it becomes less of a unit that just kills every single unit almost in the game. Bly, I think, talked about on Remax, he was very unhappy that they just one-shotted roaches, and he would like it to maybe shoot them down to 10 HP, and that would be, huge for obvious reasons with Borer and stuff. So I'm completely with MorroW on this. And lastly, I'm completely with QXC that for testing, the cost change is amazing. I just don't think it's going to have that great of an impact when in PvT and PvC, Protoss also needs a huge mineral dump because of an obvious unit, the Adept, right? Whereas in PvP, it's a bit easier to make Archons more cost efficient, etc. So you can spend less minerals. So that was just the thing I wanted to add.
Yeah, so exactly. So you would have basically a damage reduction and a cooldown reduction, and allow it to be picked up in War Prisms.
Yeah.
I think
seems interesting.
How do you kill disruptors then?
So basically, if somebody has, let's say, 2 disruptors and a War Prism, it's gonna be extremely difficult to kill. But this was the case before it was static as well, because it was invulnerable, and then you can pick it up from 5 range. So,
right.
Like we already saw that, and I thought it was like pretty okay. I would love to see it like revisited, the integration, like the.
I feel like they would have to change the current disruptor then, where it like phases out and does its damage in ethereal form, right? Because I mean, otherwise you can just drop it, do that, pick it up, and then you never ever risk the disruptor dying at all.
It has a bit more range. I like that idea though. What if when the disruptor was picked up, it did like half damage if it hit something? So it would it still allows you to harass and poke.
Or it just cancels the ball, right? That's kind of what I thought, because it seems it's.
Oh, okay. So you can't pick it up while it's invincible, or while it's doing.
It's not invincible anymore.
Yeah, while it's doing, like while the face thing is out, because that would make it invincible. Other than Muta or shit that can catch War Prisms.
Yeah, so I thought about this problem, and I think the best solution is simply when you pick up the disruptor, it will cancel the ball and initiate the cooldown. Because then you can, in case you become that the prism or whatever becomes vulnerable, and you pick it up and you want to wait for the ball or not, it becomes a very decisionary situation that I think would be very exciting for the game. And I personally would really hate to see the disruptor replace the Colossus in its current state, because the way that it has so much power, with engagements, not happening very frequently, you can basically shoot out one ball at a time, and engagement becomes so weird. It's not like a storm that does 0 damage to Marauders, but I'm just gonna do this for the sake of exaggeration, right? That you can still have engagements with a lot of storms, right? Because of other units being able to absorb damage more effectively than the Disruptor. So I think this would be if not, the best way to reduce the damage and still keep the Disruptor in play in an interesting way that you can also mix in, for example, a few Colossus. And yeah, that's what I picture in my head and just see a great way of having Colossus and Disruptors in the game.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I like the idea of being able to pick it up and cancel the ball.
Why don't we vote on Theo's idea? First of all, I'm gonna change my vote to 5 because I'm completely neutral now on the current change of the Disruptor. There seems to be pros and cons, and maybe the pros might outweigh the cons, even if it's just for science, as you guys are suggesting. So let them test, I guess. If that's what they're going for, if they're changing the cost just to test it out, then great. MorroW, you never rated it, and yeah,
I'll give it an 8 out of what CatZ said, that I want to see more Disruptors.
Yeah. Again, yeah, that's the premise that we're working under. So in case it gets confusing to anyone, we're saying it's a decent or a good change based off of the fact that Blizzard might just be looking to get the right numbers, and see the unit a little bit played more often. So why don't we rate Theo's change really quickly? Theo, do you want to sum up the change really fast for us?
Yeah. So basically, there's this feeling that the Disruptor does too much damage and too, rarely because of the large cooldown. So a change would be that we want less damage to the Disruptor, for example, 145 plus 55 to just a flat out 100 damage, so that it doesn't one-shot Marauders and Roaches, etc., and other units. And then we reduce the cooldown from, let's say, 21 seconds to 15 seconds, and we allow the Disruptor to be picked up by Warp Prisms even immediately after shooting out the projectile, but if so, before the projectile explodes, it will get cancelled.
That's if you pick it up with a Warp Prism, the projectile gets cancelled. So yeah, that's the change being proposed by Theo. Why don't we vote on that? I'll give that a 9. I could see potential problems coming from it, but if it makes the unit a little bit more stand on its own kind of thing, overlap less with Colossus, give it its own role, and it, everyone seems to agree that it would be more fun, then I think that would be a fantastic change. So.
Yeah, I'll give it a 10. I think I'm not convinced that it's totally correct, but I think it's a really interesting change, and it might lead to the best version of Disruptor we've ever seen. So I'm for it.
MorroW?
Well, I'll give it a 10 since it's like me and Theo's idea.
TLO?
Yeah, I'd give it a 10 too. You might have to slow down the Disruptor a little bit, and then we're gonna go a bit towards more the Reaver. Then you give the shot Collision as well, and then we're set.
Perfect. Theo, obviously 10 for you as well?
Yeah.
So many times.
I'm really happy you guys gave it a 10, because we actually thought about this quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty good change. The only thing that it would depend on for me, like the extra point there, is the balancing with the Disruptor being picked up by the Warp Prism and potentially like making that stop its bullshit, Because otherwise I think
the Disruptor would be vulnerable until it's picked up. So if you are able to get close to the Disruptor and there are not like 10 of them, which could cause problems, but if it's only 2 and they're vulnerable, he would be forced to pick them up or risk losing the Disruptor, and you could force the cancel the ball, which causes a lot of decisions. Because can you kill it before the ball explodes? Right.
Right.
Interesting.
Crazy, man.
So, crazy.
What about the Disruptor just can't be picked up by the Warp Prism while it's doing the ball? Then there's more risk associated to it once drop it to harass.
I just think it becomes more random, because you're going to have like vision, and sure, you could argue you could send out hallucinations if you somehow have sentries for whatever reason, or you could use an observer, but I just think it's much more interesting to see it being constantly used in these rare situations, or you try to get into the opponent's death ball or army because they're usually clumped, and then you use the ball, and if you get a hit, well, you kill every single unit except for Ultralisk now that you're Zerg, right? It just feels like it shouldn't be like a unit that does so much damage when it hits. That,
cool.
Roaches and... and all of that shit just dies, right? So like it becomes less of a risk for you as well to get hit by the disruptors with this change, and now making it less, or I should say more invulnerable or harder to kill, but at the compensation of the fact that when you get hit, you don't lose everything, right?
Right, it's not as radical. Okay, so I think it's pretty good change, and we all agree on that. Let's move on to the next
Vlad
topic.
would agree. He would give it 15.
15. Holy
Yeah,
crap.
he would give it 15. Trust me.
Okay, so we have the next topic in hand is photon overcharge. The duration is decreased from 21 to 11. I personally never dislike the design of putting photon overcharge on cannons on pylons, so I really like this change. I think during the community feedback update, Blizzard said that they weren't really worried about the pylons offensively, and I'm really happy that they made that statement. Simply because they're acknowledging that maybe everything wasn't figured out as far as pylons offensively, but I really dislike that pylons are the answer to any counter aggression that Zerg can put on right now at the very least. So I'll give the change a 10. I'm not sure if it's enough or if it's the best, but it's definitely much better than twice the duration, which was what it was. So I'll give it a 10. And why don't we go with TLO?
I think it's I agree. Having it on the pylon is really nice because you actually have a choice. Before the next, like of course you could kill the nexus, but in most scenarios it was not really a choice. So now you can decide, okay, I can kill those pylons or I can back off. And I would still like to see maybe the energy increased rather than the duration decreased so much. But I think they're going in the right direction with this. I would probably prefer more duration and not Protoss being able to spend as much though. So I'm gonna give it a 6 out of 10 because I think doubling the energy, it's 25 energy still, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I would prefer if it would be 50 energy, but old duration rather than the 11 seconds. But
yeah, I'm not sure if there was a reasoning for going with this over duration, or rather for duration over energy. I think I too would prefer the energy. It seems like it's more of a decision for Protoss, and the mothership core doesn't necessarily spawn with as many photon overcharges, so that opens up potential for aggression early game for the other races and whatnot. So I agree with Dario, but I think that this is still in the right direction. So I think I'll stick to my 10. Theo?
Okay, so I think there's quite visible consequences whether you go with energy or duration. For example, you have your army out on the map, you separate the mothership core from your army because you're getting dropped by Terran, you recall, you will have 4 overcharges for 10 seconds when you do the recall separately with the mothership core, or you would have 2 if it's 50 energy, and they will then last for a longer duration. With 25 energy, and this is something MorroW has talked about, you can actually have 4 pylons with twice the HP of that you would have with 2 overcharges with a longer duration. So in that sense, it's a buff. And also, for example, versus Zerg, this is something I like to do a lot, and I think it's the only thing that allows me to go in with a depth nerf at the moment, and with Zergs being able to overrun Protosses who doesn't have force fields, etc. The pylons, you can have 4 pylons with 50 energy, so that's cheaper, because you can get the full efficiency out of your mothership core with 4 overcharges from 200 energy on 4 pylons. Whereas with 25 energy, obviously, to get full efficiency, you would either have to overcharge 2 times, which is basically the same, or you would have to invest into 8 pylons to get as much DPS as possible in, throughout 11 seconds, right? So there's some different things you can look at, and I'm not completely sure either, but I actually personally like, being a little bit biased here. For Protoss, I think it's best to have 25 energy. That's the strongest that they can have.
The problem that I have with 25 energy as well is it seems like a fuck all ability. I mean, like I've seen pylons overcharged to kill my 2 scouting links, and that just feels stupid. It's not much of a decision right now, and that's the main issue I have with it. But those are really solid points that you're making for for the energy that I hadn't thought of really. MorroW?
Yeah, I agree with you, Cats. 25 energy feels like a wash away ability. I mentioned this in the last episode. So I like the nerf of Photon Overcharge because it was really overpowered, but I don't like the numbers they decided to dig into. I think they should have dug into the energy cost, like Telo said. I'm gonna give it an 8.
I give it 7-ish.
Why 7? You seem to like this change more. No?
Well, I mean, I like the change because it's a nerf, right? Because I think what I hate the most about Pylon Overcharge
Should have never asked.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I the only thing I hate is the offensive part of it. Actually, being able to kill scouts and stuff. Well, sure, but
Yeah, I don't
how much of
necessarily
a
hate that.
wash-away ability it
It's
is?
just frustrating. It's like, oh, okay, I guess he used 25 energy to kill my 2 lings. I guess that's worth it, and that's kind of sad that it's worth it.
Well, probably not, but it's not like you're gonna have any all-in option that you can abuse the energy with anyway. So most likely he will get that energy back anyway. So I mean, sure, if you want to scout, I mean, if it was 50 energy, I would probably, depending on how much I'm hiding a Dark Shrine, right? I would probably
That's
use it
information
anyway,
in
right?
itself, though. Like right now, you can just activate it for 25 energy, and it's like, oh,
I
I
suppose. I
guess.
suppose that's a good point. That is a good point.
Kevin?
Yeah, I think this is one of the areas where the tweaks are better than big changes. The pylon overcharge is the right way. Making it a little bit weaker is good. And I'm not sure about duration versus energy. I give this change an 8 out of 10 because it's in the right direction, but I'm not sure if it's quite enough because, like you guys said, 25 energy doesn't seem like quite enough.
Okay, so why don't we do something really quick? And I think we're all for the change because it is the direction that we all agree balance-wise the game should be going. The pylon is too strong at the moment. Pylons are just much too powerful, and we need that nerfed. But direction-wise, whether it's energy or whatever duration, why don't we vote on that really quick? Raise hands if you would prefer an energy change. Just do it. Okay, so we all agree that energy would be better. Cool. So yeah, if there's anything to take away from that, Blizzard, just maybe give us a reason why not to do that. Why no energy instead of duration? It just seems like the better way to go about it. Let's move on to the next topic, which will bring us to the Terran race, I think.
I see. It says macro mechanics.
Is it, Rob? Can you put it on screen?
Are we doing that, or are we just doing Cyclone?
No. Just let me open it. It's not changed on the screen yet. So yeah, we're going over every topic, even if it's just really quick. So I have it open now. So cooldown mule, cooldown, extra supplies, and scanner sweep now all function as they do in Heart of the Swarm. So that's just a straight up revert of things. They basically said and justified it in the community feedback update earlier this week or the week before that they basically said that Terran macro mechanics were never hard to begin with, and so like they're already catering to casuals on that regard, basically, and so they prefer the Heart of the Swarm compared to the Legacy of the Void. I think I agree with that. I think I like it a little bit better, and it still appeals to casuals. So as long as they're doing both, I'm pretty happy with the change. I'll give it a 10, and QXC and MorroW can go and expand on this now. Kevin?
So I don't like macro mechanics. I like microing, I like fighting, I like positioning, I like expanding, multitasking. I don't like macro mechanics. And even though the mule is easily the easiest of all the macro mechanics, I don't want to do it. I like the last patch when it was automated, and I was able to focus on the stuff that was more appealing to me. And I know lots of people don't share that opinion. Lots of people really like macro, and that's why it's an opinion. So I give this change a 4 out of 10.
Why don't we rate this change in comparison to what we had previous to this change, and then we can go into a quick debate on macro mechanics, because I know we'll be split on that probably. So just in relation to what it was before this change, what would you rate it?
4 out of 10.
Fine. MorroW?
Wait, so we're what? I don't understand.
Basically just saying rate the change, or talk about the change in relation to what it was before this patch,
the mule,
rather than the macro mechanics in general.
So the mule.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the what they did with the mule, so I give it a 2.
You don't what don't you like about it?
Oh, about this Heart of the Swarm mule?
Yeah.
Because I just loved how the old, or how Legacy of the Void mule used to work. It was like this is a big topic. I talked about it last week actually.
Mm-hmm.
But let me see if I can summarize it real quickly. So skipping the whole SV sacrificial was something I really liked. Not feeling like scans cost 300 minerals or 270 is something I really liked. And I really liked also the nerf that they put to like a turtling player grabbing a new base. Yeah, I think that's the summer of it, where I really liked the Legacy of the Void Mule, how it was in the last patch.
Was it too easy though? Like taking the bias away or whatever, was it too easy to make the decision? I mean, you basically need an orbital command because you're gonna get mules of it. Then you get free scans or supply drops. I feel like Terran economy was just a little too strong, and obviously that can be tweaked. But
yeah, but that's
balance.
That's balance, not design.
Okay. But decision making in the decision making department, like you said, you like that, you can scan basically without feeling like you're wasting 300 minerals, but at the same time,
I did not like the decision of dropping a mule or scanning. That was the biggest part I liked about the mule.
The thing right now, or in the previous patch, even though it wasn't like you're not losing 300 minerals, but you only get one scan, and it costs 100 energy. So like the decision of when to use it was really important.
Okay,
and the decision of where to put it.
I actually
so like,
thought it was 50 still. That's okay.
No, it was 100 in the last patch. So like you weren't losing as much money, but you had way fewer opportunities to use it correctly. So it still felt interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, as long as there's a decision associated to it, that's not just, I got a fuckload of energy and nothing better to do, then that's good. So Theo?
I'll give the last mule 10 and the new one 6.5.
Cool. Nothing to add. Dario?
CatZ, I love
everything MorroW said.
I'm just gonna say I love how we used, like I said at the beginning, like, we should have a rating from 1 to 5, and then you were like, no, we need like a 1 to 10 because people are otherwise gonna go like 3.5, or like, they want to do like that. And now Theo comes around. It's like
I give it 7.
Yeah, he still doesn't give a shit, man. He's just like 0.5 anyway. Yeah, I didn't want 0.5 stuff. That's why we made it to 10.
Okay. Well, I'll give it 7 then. And everything MorroW said, everything. The only way I could like the Heart of the Swarm Mule is if the randomness that happens because of the costs of the mule needed for Terran to proceed to a normal mid game, for example, versus Protoss, is too much of a risk or gimmicky if they don't scout the all in, or if they play macro or whatever. So that was kind of my problem with it, and that's all.
But if it's 100 energy, like MorroW pointed out, then that no longer.
Well, then you won't lose as much money, and then sure you can get behind, especially when Protoss might have some early mid game strength, even in the mid game with the adept and stuff, right? So if you don't lose as much proceeding into a mid game without information of Protoss because the scan didn't reveal necessarily if they're going Twilight into a third base or into a hidden warp prism, whatever, right? Then you don't lose as much, and you can have a greater chance of defending. But if you lose 300 or 270 minerals, I think that's quite a lot. I think that's a lot to lose.
Fair enough. Dario?
I give the return to the Heart of the Swarm Mules 10 out of 10. I didn't like how the new mules felt in Legacy. I do really like macro mechanics because attacking and doing cool stuff with your units is awesome, but without the context of having to do other things at the same time, it feels more meaningless to me. Because when both players can control their armies at the same time and focus on that, I felt like less interaction is happening a lot of times, because if you don't have the distraction of taking care of your base,
It's a decision
very
in itself, right? It's also a decision.
right, because especially as Zerg with injects, like going a bit forward, do I focus on injecting my hatchery, or do I try not to lose the 3 drones there? And sometimes injecting is better, because maybe I'm gonna lose the 3 drones anyway, even if I try to save them. And
Right.
similar with the mules, like, do I micro my units to take care of the attack, or do I take the tiny time to mule in the same time?
Yeah,
And
maybe
then
you're
maybe lose
anticipating an attack. Maybe you're just
right.
fine with losing the game.
So I don't think the macro mechanics are bad at all. As QXC said, the mule is not too hard either, so I wouldn't say it was too difficult for beginners, and because you can build up energy. And I do like the scanning or muling and TVP. I don't think it's random. You could minimize all that by playing careful, scouting, knowing your opponent.
I mean, Tyler
Of
was
course.
wrong.
Yeah, I know. I'm talking about Out of the Swarm.
Right.
I think, I mean, of course, there's a randomness factor to literally every StarCraft 2 game, but I think you could make very educated guesses about if your opponent is playing DT or not, and factoring in knowing your opponent as well, because you should do research. You could really minimize the fact. I mean, we don't see a whole lot of pro games anymore nowadays where somebody just makes a DT and Terran dies. That's, in my opinion, a thing of the past. Of course, it happens once in a while, but that's fine, in my opinion. So I like the old Mule, 10 out of 10.
Okay, because this is a very controversial topic, as you can already see, we have 1 minute till break. Okay, we have 1 minute to wrap this topic, production is telling us, but I kind of wanted to go into macro mechanics a little bit more, because it's probably the most polarizing topic with this panel right now. But basically, I agree with Dario that it's nice. The nice thing about macro mechanics is not that it necessarily complicates the game, as many, like, quote unquote elitists will see it and be like, oh, now Su won't be like the best, shit like that. But the fact that macro mechanics force you to make decisions within the game and allocate your attention, which is a resource, elsewhere, so you can play more tricks on your opponent. For example, you can say, look here, and go there, kind of thing, or you can see you can say, I'm attacking you constantly, and that's gonna that's gonna tax you. If even if my attack isn't doing direct damage, you might be missing certain things because of it. You might be missing injects, or delaying your muling, or so on, and you get affected going later into the game. What I don't like about macro mechanics is that they're not visible, and I think that's where Blizzard was going with the whole thing. I mean, obviously, like, to the audience, it's really hard to tell if someone's hitting all their injects or whatnot, or if someone's allocating their chrono boost properly, or dropping their mules in time. What matters most is the fight, and that's usually what's most important and most fun to the player. So I don't know. There's pros and cons. Personally, my dream scenario would be the removal of macro mechanics, and the implementation of the Team Liquid economy that was brought up before. Just because I think that removing the macro mechanics would make the game a little bit too slow, as it was before, and that's the opposite of what Blizzard seemed to be trying to do, and it makes it less fun as well. But there's another thing, Dario, that I'm not sure you're taking into account with macro mechanics, and that's that when they don't exist, there's a bigger focus on harassment, because losing and replacing workers is a lot harder. So that creates an interesting mechanic in itself. And I'm not sure how much you value that one, but
I think it's bad, actually. It goes so far that when you lose workers, it's too crippling, in my opinion.
So it creates virtuous snowbally games, you think?
Yeah. Like, I feel harassment is fine in this place we are in StarCraft 2. Mm-hmm. Killing workers is good, but like killing 5 workers doesn't just end the game. Like, I don't know. I like where that is right now. I mean, you could always try to make it easier to kill workers or harder to kill workers rather than messing too much with the economy.
I guess. I don't know. I really like the impact that killing workers had in games like Brood War or early on in Legacy of the Void, but
Yeah,
it creates for snowbally games. So, yeah, it's a really difficult topic to tackle. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts on this? I'll rate the change 5, by the way. I forgot I didn't rate it. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to it. Anyone have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, but I don't think we have time.
I already wrote my book on this one. It's on Team Liquid if you want to see it.
Perfect. So do you wanna let us know where to find it? Just on Team Liquid, search QXE or
Yeah, I think so.
what's
QXE on macro mechanics or something.
QXE on macro mechanics. Okay. So you guys can
There's a
check that
beautiful
out.
face in the front page.
Cool. So are we going on a break, Rob, or moving on? Okay, so we're going into the cyclone changes. This is actually really complicated. So Morrow brought this up yesterday on Skype. It's really difficult to understand.
I can summarize it.
Yeah, we actually made a graphic to summarize it too.
Oh, okay, cool.
Can you pull up the graphic, Rob? Okay. So yeah, Kevin, why don't you guide us through this?
So basically, the Cyclone got a bit more damage against air initially, and the upgrade took away some of its damage against all units and gave it to just against armored. The Cyclone now is really, really strong against armored air units, and is a bit weaker than before against armored non-armored ground units, but is about the same against actually armored ground units after the upgrade. So gameplay implications are that it's weaker against zealots and adepts.
Wait,
and
why is it weaker now?
because they aren't armored, it does bonus damage against armored.
Right, but did they change the base damage?
Zealots and adepts are light, so it doesn't do bonus to them.
Yeah, but I don't think they changed the base damage. Like, I think it's a straight up buff.
No, it's not.
It's not? Okay.
No.
That's why we made the graphic, guys.
Yeah, that's why we
More
made
confusion.
Yep.
It's a slight nerf against light, and it's about the same, if not exactly the same, against armored. It's a little funny because some of the tooltips use Blizzard time and some of the tooltips use real time. But I checked it earlier today, and I'm pretty sure that's how it works. So Zealot Adepts are like the only light units you'd use them against where it matters. Zerglings you kill with other stuff. Hydralisks have so few hit points that it doesn't really matter. Don't really understand the change, because Zealots and Adepts were like the main thing that you wanted to use Cyclones against, and they weren't that useful against anything else. And having them do bonus damage against armored air units, it's like Corruptors and Battle Cruisers and Carriers and Void Rays is what it's better against. Like, I don't know why that was
trying to give you an answer to carriers, basically.
I don't think they're an answer to Carriers, though, because it's still so hard to get in range. I don't know. I haven't tried them against Carriers, but my impression in the past with Carriers against Cyclones is that the Cyclones can't get close enough to lock on, so it's really hard to actually do enough damage to justify it.
Morrow? Go on rating, Kevin?
6. This change is confusing, and I don't understand why it happened.
It is confusing.
All right, I just want to say, like, I think the Cyclone has too many like different damage states that is just simply too confusing. Like, even me as a pro gamer, I find it confusing when I was reading this and all that. So I wish they would really simplify things. If they want to do some stuff that has like extra damage to armor, they should keep it consistent. Like I want more consistency with how the damage operates. But that aside, the big deal for me personally when I saw this note is that it deals, when it pops out of the factory, it deals double damage to air units, and it can lock on to air units. So you can like what immediately I went to think about was Terran versus Terran. like now you will go back to Cyclone opening in Terran vs. Terrans, because it's actually going to deal with a Banshee and stuff like that. You can deal with a War Prism much better using a Cyclone. So I kind of like the change overall. Again, I like as far as late game goes and your army compositions, I'm just a question mark there, because I haven't really used the unit much at all in terms of late game. So I'm not sure what rating to give it. I'll give it like a 6.
Dario?
I mean, I still think this unit just shouldn't exist. So it's hard for me because I just don't like anything about the Cyclone. So I don't care much about the changes either. I think it's fundamentally flawed as a unit. Having this weird lock-on, I don't think fits very well into StarCraft 2. I mean, the only thing I can say is I haven't seen any Cyclones since I started playing Legacy. So making them better is probably a good thing, just like in terms of if you want to have this unit in the game, it's probably not good enough right now, but maybe that's just TBC, and that's the only experience I can talk from. So I really don't have any idea. I don't feel like I can even give it a rating.
Okay, question mark it is. And Theo?
Well, I agree with what QXC and Mara has said. The only thing I would like to add for me in TPP, I think if it somehow proves to be a viable early game tool against Warp Prisms, Oracle, and so on, I think it's kind of cool for Terran to have this unit up to maybe 2 or 3 so they can deal with early game stuff and maybe not see too many of them like massed as we've previously seen. I think that's okay. It helps Terran against Warp Prisms and stuff, but otherwise I can understand, Tilo, that it does seem a bit flawed in the design, but just like with the Colossus, I might want to keep it for the sake of the good small things it can add to, for example, early game TVP. So I'll rate it 8-ish.
Okay.
That's a 8.5 in disguise, I think.
8.2, actually.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, just to close thoughts on that, I too agree that the unit is confusing as fuck, and this was even more confusing because Blizzard didn't even tell us what it was changing from to. But yeah, I'm not sure how to feel about it. We'll see how it interacts in the game. Really, I like that the changes going hand in hand with the Cyclone change, for example, because I feel like there might be a gap there for Terran. Right now, for example, against Zergs that open fast Muta, if you're playing Terran, normally you would make an early Cyclone. Here, with the current patch, it won't be the case anymore. Oh, I'm sorry, Liberators is what I'm talking about. It won't be the case anymore because the Liberator requires an upgrade now to Siege, so you don't want to be getting those Liberators, and they don't have the dual utility where they're going to be able to scare Mutas out and go, for a counter attack or a push right after, or even as Mutas are popping out. So I like that it kind of makes up for that fact potentially, and maybe helps against Muta. Against Zerg, it gives you options as Terran potentially. And I like that, and for that reason, I'll give the change a 7. But yeah, I'm not exactly sure how to feel about the unit itself. So, if anyone has any closing thoughts on this, shall we move on? Move on it is. And that leads us straight into Liberator's Defender mode. Now requires research again, and the cost is 150. Research time is 79 seconds, and it's researched at a starport with a tech lab. So let's start with the Terran players. MorroW?
Okay. I didn't like adding an upgrade for it, because like if you add an upgrade for a unit like this, you're pretty much forcing a player into committing into that unit. Like, let's say Hellions were useless without Blue Flame, then people would only get Hellions if they were gonna use Hellions like throughout the game. So I really like the idea of using like 1 Liberator, 2 Liberators, like in your build, and then you stop building them. Because I've already found myself doing that in a lot of games. Mm-hmm. So I don't like the idea of adding an upgrade to fix the issue of standing behind mineral lines or whatever it was. So I think it's in the wrong direction to add the upgrade. I will say, however, that early Liberators in the game was a problem And I think Liberator as a unit itself might be a little bit overpowered. I just don't think the upgrade was the right way to go about it. My rating, I'll give it a 5.
Yeah. Kevin?
So I agree that early Liberator was OP, for sure, against Zerg and Protoss. It was a dumb build. It led to degenerate gameplay. But I also agree with... What?
No, it's just funny. Go
They
on.
had funny choice of words.
Yeah.
I also agree with MorroW that I don't like this. So I don't like when they put upgrades for units that can be built out of a reactor on a tech lab for a structure that you really only want to build one of. And this has been the classic problem with medevacs, is like, I don't want to build a second starport. I don't want to put a tech lab on my one starport because then I can't build medevacs. So that just feels weird to me. I'd like them to try Fusion Core as the requirement for the siege mode instead of an armory. And it has two things that are critical to making it delayed. The first one is that it costs an additional 50 gas. And all those one-base builds are very, very tight on gas, so it would delay things by a non-trivial amount. And the other thing is that Fusion Core requires a starport to build. So you cannot start the Fusion Core until after the starport is finished. Whereas with like a proxy starport liberator build, you would start the armory when the starport is almost finished, so that as soon as the liberator finishes, you would also have the siege mode upgrade usually, especially with the minus 50 gas. So that's where I would like to see them start with the requirement. If that doesn't work, maybe something crazy like it requires an armory and a fusion core. I just really don't like when they put tech lab upgrades for units that can be built out of a reactor on the starport.
Cool.
So I think I'll give this a 7 because it addressed a problem that needed to be addressed, but not in the way that I would like to see it tried.
Okay, that's cool. So we have two different perspectives here, but with MorroW and CatZ, kind of leading towards the same idea, but in two different directions. So, TLO, your thoughts on it?
I would go into a different direction. I also think the tech lab kind of thing is bad because it's just
It's inconsistent.
it deals with the immediate timing and then has no effect later on. So what I would rather do is I would like to see a range upgrade for the Liberator Defender mode. So you reduce the Defender mode like range, so you can't put the Liberators in like those weird spots anymore to just kill Burkers, and the other guy can't do anything about it unless he has a certain units to deal with that.
Yeah.
So it would be nice if you just maybe in the armory you just had a range upgrade. You know, you just reduce the range of that thing by 2 or something, and then you get the upgrade later on.
That's actually what we talked about last episode, or we touched on it at least. So we'll probably vote on that later because I think I too agree that that's the way to go, and I think we mostly do. But the current change, what will you rate it?
A 5 out of 10 because I think the timing was too harsh, but I think the change is the wrong direction. So it's still better than before, but I don't think that's how they should do it.
Cool. Theo?
Well, I'm not sure yet. I'm just going to start off and say I rated a 7. I think this will have consequences for PvT in the sense that, you know, you can basically go pure adept for the first I don't know how many minutes, but you don't need a Stargate anymore unless you really want to scout, you know, proxy liberator and stuff, or even just in-base liberators, one-base liberators. So, personally, I think this is a good change. Precisely because of the reduction in that, but I think that might give Protoss a bit too. It would give Protoss more strength for sure. So 7. And then I agree with what is being said here.
Great. Just to sum things up, I'll give the change a 4. I think, like most people here, that it's the wrong direction to take, and so I'll rate it pretty low. But yeah, I think the Liberator definitely needed to be addressed, and that's a good thing that they're looking at it. But I don't like the implications. QXC brought up a point that I hadn't thought about even in the tech lab, and that's just inconsistent with the unit. Again, it's a unit that can be made up of a reactor, and then you have a tech lab for the upgrade, and it just feels weird and awkward. And switching things around. And with the upgrade, like MorroW said, you kind of have to feel like you have to commit to a unit when you spend that much on it. It's not just a money investment, but also a time. I think if they're dead set on going with the upgrade should probably cost less, so it feels like less of a commitment. I wouldn't mind the upgrade costing nothing but time, even, so that it kicks in later in the game, because that's the main issue right now is how early it kicks in. However, we do have, we proposed what Dario said here last in the last show we had, and I think that's definitely the best way to go about it. Just reduce the range on the Liberator so that it can't be abused on certain maps by sieging mineral lines from behind. At least from a cert perspective, I didn't mind Liberator pushes. They're hard to stop, but with the range nerf, that would address that problem to an extent as well. And it wouldn't feel helpless if a Liberator gets in an incredibly annoying position. And again, if you want the Liberator to have the range, that could be an upgrade later on if you're committing to them, or just for the late game to zone out a little bit better and have your Liberators in positions where they're not going to be as easily reached. Plus, later on, for example, at least for Zerg, we have the Ravager upgrade, which kind of goes hand in hand and is a direct counter to the range on that regard. Another thing that I don't like is that, like I touched on the previous topic when I was talking about the Cyclone, the 4th could just get a Liberator, and it kind of accounts for Muta, and it gives you an easy transition into a push, or even go for a push and not be completely dead if your opponent has Muta. Because obviously the Liberator shoots air, but not ground. Now, you are not going to see Liberators pushing away Muta, because you're not going to get Liberators early on. They basically said this unit's place is in the mid game and maybe in the late game, and that's it. And it shouldn't be used in the early game. And I just don't like that. I like the Liberator design as it was. And I think that the best way to go about it would just be to tweak the range. So I think we should vote on that change. Liberator range to be nerfed by a couple of whatever the fuck the measurement is. Pixels?
Yeah, so right now it's got range 9.
Mm-hmm.
For reference, siege tanks have range 13, Marines have range 5, Colossus has range 9. So it's about the range of a Colossus. And the Circle has radius 2, I think.
Yeah.
Where Psionic Storm has radius more like 1.
Great.
I think those are approximately correct.
Perfect. And yeah, I'm not concerned about the radius. I'm not sure if anyone else is. I like that the unit feels powerful as fuck, and if you get in that radius, you're gonna get fucked up because the unit has drawbacks in how long it takes to siege, and that it can't move while it's sieged. So I really like the duality there of the unit being incredibly powerful if it gets in a good position. But yeah, again, just I think the range is and was the main problem, and fixing that just kind of fixes everything. So let's vote on that. I would rate just reducing the range by maybe just 2 or even 1 at 10.
And then making it an upgrade?
No upgrade.
Oh, so the Liberator just starts at 7 range and has no upgrades at all.
Oh, you can upgrade the range, but yeah, remove the current upgrade where you have to upgrade.
And would it still require an armory to siege?
No, I don't. Did it before? Because that wasn't an issue. Okay, then yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. It seems pretty good. I think you should be able to defend the back of your mineral line. Maybe it needs to have range 6. I'm not sure, 6 or 7. And then an upgrade. If the upgrade was on the armory, it would be really nice. And that upgrade gives the Liberator full range. Or even if it was, I guess it could be on the Tech Lab on the Starport, whatever. Yeah, I like it. 8 out of 10, because you never know until you try it.
Okay, Dario, since you brought this up this episode, want to touch on it?
Yeah, well, I would give it a 8 out of 10 as well. I think everything has been said. This could be said about the topic, really.
Okay, MorroW?
Yeah, I'll give it a high rating. 8 out of 10. That would be a better solution.
And Theo?
I'm not sure. It depends on whether you need the armory to siege or not, and how fast you can get it. Because if you don't, it's not going to change the timings. But if it's changed to the extent that you can get it early enough so that Protoss has to go Stalkers, there's goods and bads about that, but as far as I understand, it won't really change so much for the timing of the current Liberator Rush situation. So if there's no problems with that, I'll give it 8 as well.
Cool. I don't think there should be any problems with that because it would be just as we knew it in the previous patch with a nerfed range. So it would just be a slightly weaker unit, but more than that, less stupid when it gets behind a mineral line. So okay, I think we agree that that's the direction that Blizzard should take with the Liberator. And now we're on to our final segment of the show. It is gonna be the Sargrives. So Creep now receipts twice as fast. Dario.
Yeah, with kept in mind that it also spreads much faster, right? I give it a 10 out of 10. It's nice, more dynamic, you know. I push forward with creep really quickly, but if the other guy just clears it up, you know, it's no big deal. So you still have time as Zerg to bring in a queen anyway and put in your tumor. So it's a good change. It makes the game a bit faster, and it was super frustrating for especially Terran. If like a base is creeped up and you kill the creep and then you still have to wait forever for the creep to clear. So I like it.
Cool. Kevin?
Yeah, totally agree with Dario. Creep has always felt not dynamic enough. Just sometimes there would be so much creep that it was impossible to ever clear it, and this addresses that. 10 out of 10.
MorroW?
Yeah, I agree completely with what you guys said. It's a great change. 10 out of 10.
Theo?
Amazing. No Overlord can now camp my 3rd base or 4th base for 10 minutes. Excellent.
Yes.
10.
Yep, I too like the change. Do you give it a 10, Theo, or a 9.9?
I'm gonna give it a 10.
Okay, cool. I'll give it a 10 as well, and we can move on from this topic pretty fast. So that's great. Overlord transport upgrade now only requires an evolution chamber. I think I'll start on that. I like that it's more accessible. At the same time, I'm not sure if it's great. I think that the Overlord drops didn't really need a nerf at all, and I brought this up before in the last episode and during Red Bull Battlegrounds. But yeah, I think that the Overlord drop was already a heavy commitment from Zerg before. Maybe with the economic changes reverted, it's good that there is an impediment to do it, because before with less larva, for example, it was an even bigger commitment. So maybe I haven't been taking that into account now that I'm saying it out loud. Maybe it's just a good change. It's certainly better than having it on there. The only problem is that the Evo Chamber, you make the Evo Chamber and you kind of feel committed to potentially going into upgrades. Right now, against Terran, that shouldn't be much of an issue. I think that you want the upgrades anyway, but for Protoss, you sometimes want to delay those upgrades and like figure out which one you want. So I think this overall is a good change. It just feels a little bit weird to me. I'll give it a 9. It just feels a little unnatural, I should say.
Yeah, that seems reasonable. I thought the previous Overlord drop was pretty oppressive against Terran. You basically always had to leave units at home. You couldn't really open CC first. This seems like a nice balance. Although I got a lot of Terran bias on this one. I'd rather just see it go back to lair. And that might not be the best thing for Zergs or for the game, but this is one change for some reason. It just always rubs me the wrong way, and it's incredibly annoying to play against.
Yeah, if I may touch on that, it's I really quickly. I think that the Overlord drop before was a feel good type strategy where you feel like you're doing well as Zerg, but it's such a heavy investment to do it early on that if it's not a response to something, you're usually falling pretty far behind. If the Protoss has an Adept at their base, or the Terran has Marines or a Reaper in place. So I liked how the strategy worked before, because it was a big. It was a medium risk, medium reward type thing. I never felt like I won a game because of it, and I never felt like I have felt like I fall really far behind from it. So that's the thing. I like the risk, and I like that it was an option before. So yeah. But I guess it can be an option now with the Overlord drops and on the Evo Chamber still. Dario?
I kind of agree with CatZ. I think I like it more in layer, but only if the Overlord would actually be a little bit faster than it's right now. When I suggested to make individual Overlords, make it an individual upgrades for Overlords to drop, I hope they would make the Overlord that drops a little bit faster. I would rather pay 50-50. Right now it's 25-25, right? Or is it 50-50?
25-25.
Yeah, I would rather pay 50-50 and have a little bit more speed. Because right now the problem is when it becomes online, Overlords are so slow that they're easy to just get sniped, other than the other drops. Like, they're much more mobile. So what I don't like if it's on hatchery tag, though, is especially CVC. Because I really like Ling Baneling, and as soon as you can just put Banelings into an Overlord, Ling Baneling versus Ling Baneling becomes super weird in
Yeah,
a
it's really
bad way.
chaotic.
Yeah, I think at least. I don't think Ling Baneling should be this thing where Overlords go in your main, and then there's an Overlord, and you're not sure is there Baneling in there or not, and then all your links blow up. It's like already so volatile as a scenario, and so hard to manage that I don't think we want to complicate that scenario even more. And I agree that also in the end, I don't think the Overlord drop will have such a strong effect in the early game that we need it. But it can make for some very frustrating experiences, especially for lower league players.
Mhm.
So I would like it on layer, but a little bit buffed, basically.
Okay.
So I don't like the change so much.
One thing.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead,
so
Miranda.
I would give it a 3 out of 10.
So it seems like there's a lot of there's a lot of issues with the power level of Overlord drop. Like, it starts off, if you can do it right away, as maybe like a little bit too strong, but if it's on layer tech alone, then it's like kind of too weak. So it'd be interesting if either what Dario said, like when the Overlord upgrades, it has slightly higher movement speed and it's slightly more expensive, or like you can have Overlord drop from the beginning, but if you get an Evo chamber, like the cost decreases, and if you have a layer, then when you upgrade it, it's slightly faster. So there would be like an upgraded Overlord, like a transport Overlord, is its own type of unit, and it has some specific upgrades that are related to like what structures the Zerg has. So you could have it available relatively early, but it wouldn't be super useful until you have like an Evo chamber, you have a layer, and then it like gets a little bit better automatically.
That sounds pretty cool, but I don't know if it's a little too complicated, like too complex to explain to like casuals and whatnot, or just in general.
Yeah, I just don't see it as anything Blizzard would do. Like, that's also something that always needs to be kept in mind for certain ideas. Like, maybe it's a good idea, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of did it with the Cyclone, and we kind of just bitched about how complex it was to understand that. So.
Okay. I'm not sure if you guys have played Lucera, but I'm sure if, at least if not CVC, but maybe in TVC, he likes to do Baneling drops with these Overlords all the game, like non-stop. Like, he does it all the time. I think that's very cool. It leaves Protoss much more stressed than those rather stale things, Disruptor versus Lurker all the time, or carriers or whatever. That's kind of cool. I think Tilo's suggestion is very good. What I would like to see as well is that you can see the Overlord being upgraded, because the next thing I've seen is Overlords, coming into my middle line, and you can see if there's an upgrade and it is just a fake and you pull all your probes away, right? I mean, is that fine? I don't know. But with the speed upgrade, I would probably like to see some way that you can see if it's upgraded, because otherwise you're going to panic a lot more, and that's just, Overlords is 100 million investment coming all over the place and stuff. But otherwise, I think it's maybe okay to not see it.
No, that's a good point, I think. I mean, if you see a medevac or a war prism, it's safe to assume that there's something inside, and it's not the case with Overlords, so it opens up for just mind games on that regard, and it's a very cheap mind game because you're gonna make and have Overlords anyway. So yeah, I don't see a reason for which there shouldn't be an indicator that units are inside or potentially inside an Overlord.
And then in short, just like with Blink All In and everything, as long as the upgrade, or in any way you change the Overlord upgrade, makes the game interesting. For example, the games I've played versus Lucera, or like you would like CatZ, being able to have rest and do damage when it's successful rather than just win the game. I would like all of these early game scenarios to be more focused around getting leads, perhaps securing a win if it goes really, really well. But I think, especially in Heart of the Swarm, TVP, a lot of games, DTs, Blink All-Ins, Proxy Robo, Proxy Stargate, Void Rain, all of these things as they've progressed through time, has been very either you die or you win. I've seen some of the games, guys, and I really liked how it worked with Ling Harass, that you do damage, you trade away the Lings, and then you progress into the next stage, right? That's been cool.
Yeah, that's basically what I was saying before as well. I really like that the way it was before pre all of these nerfs, just when the Overlord tech was available, when the drop tech was available, simply because I never felt like it won me or like it straight up won me a game because of it. And I felt like I could fall pretty far behind. If anything, at MLG with like I was talking with the RG and True and going into proto strategy because they were playing against Huck and MC, and I was telling them how like not to do order drops unless it's a response to something, like maybe if they opened Forge and Cannons. That is the one part that I didn't like about the Overlord drop being so early, is that it made it so that Forge Fast Expanse, for example, wouldn't exist, but Ravagers kind of already do that, so I figured you might as well. I don't know. I personally just would prefer no requirement, and maybe a requirement to make the overlords faster or more useful and scale up better through the mid and late game. MorroW?
I think this change is great. It used to be, like, in my opinion, overpowered when it didn't require lair. But then after they moved it to lair, like, I saw not a single guy went for overlord drops, and I think it's just because that timing of the game, like, you're not really overlord dropping anymore. So I still want it to be a strategy. Is something that I want players to keep in mind, that certain players can go overlord drops. So what I really like about it is that it's an evolution chamber tech, and what this means is that if you're, for example, a guy intending to play a macro game, you eventually you want to have an evolution chamber, so it doesn't feel like an expensive investment for somebody who wants to harass and transition. Whereas for someone who's playing all in, it's gonna feel a lot. And that's what I think is really, really good about it. Like, my concern for the Overlord drop pre-lair nerf was that
Roaches?
people just get Overlord drops just to kill your opponent, and that's what I didn't like about it. So I'm gonna give this change an.
Did you ever die to an overlord drop then?
Yes, it has happened, but
Roaches,
like every single game, I had the same feeling that QXC mentioned, that you can't leave your base. Like, it's just so awkward. So you want to know that they at least invested something into giving you that feeling.
Right.
So that's why I think the evolution chamber requirement is really fair. So I got a suggestion. Actually, you guys have also brought it up, but I would like to have a voting on it, that an upgraded overlord should have a different model to avoid weird situations where you pull away your workers, or you avoid Ling Baneling over an overlord because you're just afraid there's a Baneling in it or something like that. So I would love to see a different model for an upgraded overlord.
Yeah, I support that.
Yep, I'll vote 10 on that.
I actually kind of like that you can fake drop, so I'm gonna give it a 0 MorroW. I have to completely disagree.
All right, that's fine.
Well,
especially sorry.
I mean, it kind of becomes redundant if they're gonna we go with the suggestion that an upgraded overlord that drops is gonna be faster anyway. Then you're not gonna have an issue. But as long as we have the slow overlords, then I think it's nice if you can mind game, because it's not crazy anyway. It's not like you have to react so fast, and it's not like you can't intercept the overlord before.
Yeah, I think they're mostly advocating for the fact that you can fake drops and then force an entire mineral line to be pulled off with a unit that you're gonna have anyway, and that's gonna have speed anyway. So, but yeah, I agree with you. If they just gave it the speed upgrade, then the model wouldn't be necessary. Otherwise, I'm all for the model. Theo?
Yeah, I think I agree with Tilo. I think mind games to an extent should be in the game. This is one example, but I think only if it's with the speed upgrade we should need a model, because otherwise you still invest the 25 gas and you could fly a fake medevac and argue that's kind of the same thing and it's much faster and stuff, right? So, but at least you will see the Widowmice and have time to respond to that drop, right? And Protoss might have Templars to counter it and stuff. So yeah, that's the thing.
Exactly. Like with an Overlord, you're mostly going to be moving your mineral line. With a War Prism or a medevac, you're mostly going to be moving your army towards it to deal with it. So it's definitely two different things. But yeah, okay. Like did we all vote on it, or Theo? What do you rate MorroW's change then?
With speed, 10. With a speed boost to the upgrade, 10.
Right, and
Without
assuming that it stays the same, would you like a model for it or not?
8-7, because I think it's still nice rather than the mind game thing, because if it's something that it just happens every game and you have to guess every mineral line if that's fake or not fake, I could just picture it becoming a bit annoying.
It's frustrating. I'm all for eliminating frustrating from the game for other players, just because I really hate unit design that relies mainly on one player's ability to micro decision making rather than the other one. Like, for example, I've always disliked Reapers and Hellions because, they like design ways, just because the Zerg can't do anything until you get link speed, basically, type thing. So I think it's a similar situation with the Overlords. I would, and I love mind games, but yeah, I think that it's just frustrating more than anything else. You can still get those mailing drops off by multitasking, going on multiple places and whatnot, rather than hoping that your opponent pulls or doesn't pull a mineral line and bluff like that. Kevin,
What?
do you already rate it?
Yeah, I was first.
Okay, cool. So these are the right ratings, Rob, for everyone. Okay, so this is the proposed change for MorroW, which was to have the Overlord have a different model when it gets upgraded. And yeah, we're a little bit split on it, but for the most part, I think we would want to see it at least tested. Next topic, and one of the last topics now, is going to be Roach Burrow. Move speed decreased from 3.85 to pi.
So what's it in? Do you know how this is compared to HOTS?
I do not know.
Okay.
It's still way faster.
So you might not be able to find it correctly because Blizzard time and real time are different, and Legacy uses different time from HOTS. Movement speeds are weird between the two games.
Yeah.
So you may only be able to find
slightly faster, and that is going off my eye. It's still they're slightly better than Hardware Swarm.
Yeah. I give it 10. I think I like that Burrow is a little better than it used to be, but the way it was before this patch was ridiculous, and I hated it.
Cool. MorroW?
I agree with QXC. I give this change a 10.
Sweet. TLO?
I'm gonna give it a 8 because I think maybe it's a bit over-tweaked, maybe 3.3 or something. Just like a tiny bit faster than right now would be good, but definitely Roach is very ridiculous with speed.
Great. Theo?
I kind of agree with Tito. The only thing I would like to add is if a Protoss opens Stargate and you kind of want to skip on the Robo, it can be a troubling thing with an Oracle not having proper detection, because 60 seconds for a 50 energy spell. That's the only thing. We've talked about that. But yeah, 8 out of 10.
Yeah, I'll give it a 9. I'm with you guys. I think that it's the right place to look. The biggest problem that I have with that is, or with this, is the time. It's because roaches haven't been, like, even burrow roaches, even though they're incredibly powerful, we don't see a ton of them because there's so much exploring that needs to be done with the game. And again, takes me back to the tight deadline that we have, which is like a couple of months until release, to test things like this. So yeah, I'll give it a 9. I think it was a little too powerful, even if we didn't see a lot of it. And yeah, I think that pretty much sums it up. So on to the last topic, and it's gonna be. Do we miss anyone? Did I miss anyone? All right, good, everyone. Okay. Spawn larva no longer can be autocast. Multiple casts now can be queued on a single base. So, Dario, why don't you open with your thoughts on this?
That's a straight 10 out of 10. I hated the autocast with all my heart. It felt, first of all, you had those weird, that could have been fixed, but the fact that queens just injected a hatchery and didn't give a shit if you want to make a tumor or not, that was awful. But also, it happens so many times that, for example, Reaper's like shooting at your drone, and then your queen just wanders off and injects the hatchery, and all those interactions were super weird. I mean, you could have probably put in something like queens prioritize fighting or injecting or something that could have been fixed, but the way it was awful. And I don't know, it's just the whole game flow or Zerg felt very strange to me without having to ever do anything in your base in late game. I just ended up only looking at my army, not basically not macroing anymore at all, except like pressing a few buttons here and there. And also defending against pushers was so simplified because you didn't need to split your attention between injecting and fighting. At the same time, I think the new variant is much more beginner friendly.
Yeah.
Because starting to build up energy is not a big deal. Like, you can make up for it later, and then you're gonna have perfect injects for a while. So I don't think it's really gonna affect lower leagues anyway, because they make so many mistakes that, you know, it's not gonna matter if they don't hit a few injects in the early game, and then afterwards it becomes easier because of the queuing up. And also for pro gamers, it's I think it's nice because late game Legacy is so chaotic that if you would have the completely old injects, maybe it would be a little bit tough. But because if you have 2 extra queens or something, you can queue up a lot of injects and then micro a little bit, and then, you know, you don't have to macro for a while and come back to it later. Feels nice. Like, when I played today, it just felt really good. So I like it.
Perfect. I agree with everything TLO said, basically. Yeah, I pretty much just agree with everything you said. I'll give it a 10 as well. Kevin?
So I like reducing macro in general. I think this is a point where I'm actually with you guys in favor of adding some macro complexity, and it basically comes down to equality between the 3 races. If StarCraft as a whole was more action-oriented and less macro-oriented, then auto-injects seem okay. But when Terran and Protoss have to look back and build depots and do stuff in their base basically almost the entire game, and Zerg doesn't, that feels wrong.
Yeah.
And I particularly like this change because it puts injects more on the level of mules and chrono, which is like, if you do it perfectly, you're better than everyone else. But you can always like make up the time that you lost by spending like the leftover energy or whatever. So 10 out of 10. This is great.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. MorroW?
Yeah, I'll give it a 10 out of 10. Like, it forgives the bad players, the casuals, and it rewards the pro gamer Zergs. And also, like, inject was the vocal point of like Zerg macro, so eliminating that would just have been terrible. Like, TLO made a tweet, you know, saying that it felt like playing Warcraft 3 or something like that. Like, I could totally agree with that. Yeah, and so it's just very important that Zerg keeps, you know, this level of macro that they have. So I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Theo Mikkelsen.
Yeah, I give it a 10 out of 10. I actually, the only thing I disagree with, I actually think it helps the casuals more than TLO might think, actually. Consider you have 3 injects, and this casual player, very new player, he injects every 40 energy. By the time that he's missed 2, he can then shift or queue up additional, and he will have then 2, around 2 injects perfectly injected, as opposed to his average would be every 40 energy, and at some point he will get 200. So I think that's huge for a very bad player. Of course, if you progress up to the Diamond League, where you skip every 3 or 4 energy in average, of course it would have a less impact, but that's just great. It's supposed to give them the practice and let them know that this StarCraft is always hard in any aspect. So yeah.
Yep. So to summarize, I just want to make it a point. I think this is one of the only point that we've like maybe all of us gave it a 10 out of 10. At least this episode. Maybe there was a point or two last episode, but I think it's really admirable what Blizzard managed to do here because they managed to make everyone happy, basically, right? They found a middle ground that works perfectly, that appeals to casuals and pros alike, and it seems just like a brilliant solution to a problem. So, great job, whoever thought of that at Blizzard headquarters. Don't think I could have done a better job at that. So, with that, go on, bro. Oh shit!
Oh, what? Really?
Cool. So just got an update from Rob from production. There is a new community feedback update. So we'll take a quick break and wait. If anyone wants to leave, you guys are very welcome to leave. We'll try and find a replacement for you. If there's pros watching, message me on Skype if you wanna come join us for the second part of the show, where we'll be just improv going into a new community feedback update. So Kevin, you're going.
Maybe we could just
Dario going.
do it tomorrow or something if everybody's leaving.
Nah, no pussy, man. I think we should just go for it. Just heal.
Yeah, you guys.
No pussy.
It'll be great.
Yeah, like I want to go for it, but